Is next.
Good evening and thank you for joining us for KREM 2 News at 5. I'm Mark Hanrahan.
Welcome everyone. I'm Whitney Ward. We are following up tonight on a deadly drive-by shooting that killed a 15-year-old boy in East Central last week. Court documents suggest it was gang related, and the boy's parents told police their son had been harassed by gang members trying to get him to join.
So we wanted to know, could anything have been done to protect the victim? Our Taylor Vito took that question to authorities.
It's heartbreaking. Kid's 15 years old. You know, nobody should ever have to see that.
Some are still reeling from this deadly drive-by last Thursday. According to investigators, a teenage boy was shot in the head in East Central, not far from Underhill Park. He later died after being taken to a hospital.
No parent should ever have to bury their child.
Arrests in the case have been made, and those suspects are behind bars. But according to court documents, the parents of the 15-year-old told authorities that members of a local gang were pressuring their son to join the gang. And just 2 days before the shooting, documents say 2 people drove by the victim's home and showed guns, trying to intimidate the boy into joining them.
It's not fair, and it's senseless. There's no reason for it. You know, these things should never, ever happen.
This man is a Spokane police officer and a gang intelligence officer. He's assigned to the Spokane Regional Safe Streets Task Force, which combats gang violence. Now, based on the nature of his work as a plainclothes officer, we agreed to not name him or show his face for this story. As for the 15-year-old's death, the boy's family had said that he was being harassed by gang members. So we wanted to know, could anything have been done to prevent this?
The one thing that I've learned in this job is what we always do is when anything ever happens in this department, where something critical incident, what it is, we always look back and what we can do better, you know, and that's one of those moments where I think taking just a little pause, you know, people cooler heads and maybe come together and figure out what a solution could be.
The officer says the Safe Streets Task Force will always have its successes and failures, but he says he knows that he and his colleagues will always fight to deter gang violence before it happens. He says crime or gang activity that's prevented before it happens is hard to measure. But in the case of the 15-year-old, multiple units came together to investigate what happened, and 2 suspects were arrested in about a day.
We're going to keep fighting for what's right. We're going to take care of our citizens. We're going to do what's right. We're going to make sure that the people are proud of their police department.
Both suspects in the case are facing murder charges. Bail for one was set at $1 million, while bail for another was set at $750,000. In Spokane, Taylor Vito, KREM 2 News.
Human remains found on Sunday have been identified as a 19-year-old from Newport missing since last month. Jason Fox was reported missing by family members back on September 16th.
Now, Jason's father, Michael, provided a statement through email to KREM. He says the loss of Jason is a devastating blow to our family. He also said this is not over for us or our community. Though arrests have not been made, he says the animals who did this are roaming free when they should be caged for life. Please continue to provide any tips you think could help to the Pend Oreille County Sheriff. Jason deserves justice. By the way, the number for the Sheriff's Office is right there on your screen. The Washington gubernatorial debate is tonight. Governor Jay Inslee will face off with his Republican challenger, Loren Culp, the current police chief in the town of Republic. That debate will air here on KREM 2 at 8. Now, our political reporter, Casey Decker, is joining us live now with a preview of what you're going to see tonight and what it all means. Hi, Casey.
Hey, Whitney. Well, tonight is the first and likely only time that these two will go head-to-head, and it's fair to say that the stakes tonight are higher for Loren Culp than they are for Jay Inslee. Now, Inslee carried the primary in August with over 50% of the vote, despite having a record 35 different opponents. Culp had an impressive showing, dominating the other Republicans with about 18%, but still has a long way to go to catch Inslee. The most recent poll conducted a few weeks ago has Inslee with 53% to Culp's 37%. That's obviously a big gap, and it also suggests that a lot of people still just don't really know Loren Culp or what he stands for. He's had a very successful grassroots organization and held some pretty big rallies, but for many folks, tonight will be their first time really hearing from him. I'd expect him to go after Inslee for 2 things in particular. One, his handling of the coronavirus. Culp has said from the start that the state's response was too extreme and infringed on personal liberties. That may not actually be a winning strategy, though. Polling in August showed nearly 60% of Washingtonians thought the state's response was appropriate. Culp will also surely lean into his history in the military and law enforcement. On the campaign trail, he's been attacking Inslee for his response to the protests throughout the state, but particularly in Seattle, calling for racial justice. Culp has said if he were governor, he'd be cracking down more. Now, Inslee, for his part, he's a two-term incumbent. He's got a pretty high approval rating, and Washington is also just generally a pretty blue state. So whereas Culp really needs to make a mark if he wants to win in November tonight, Inslee pretty much is going to be focusing most likely on just not really making any big mistakes. We'll see what all happens at 8 o'clock tonight. I'll send things back to you for now, Whitney.
All right, Casey, thank you very much. The one and only vice presidential debate between Vice President Mike Pence and Senator Kamala Harris is just under an hour away. That will kick off at 6 p.m. tonight. Extra safety measures have been put into place for tonight's highly anticipated matchup at the University of Utah. The debate will be divided into 9 segments. The topics haven't been revealed, but are expected to include the coronavirus, of course, which is now impacting the White House, the economy, the Supreme Court vacancy as well. And with Election Day quickly approaching, political signs are on display in yards, windows, and billboards. Voicing your support for a candidate is, of course, protected under the Constitution. However, if you're renting, can your landlord tell you to take down a political sign from your window? Let's verify. Jan recently reached out to the KREM to Verify team, claiming that a Spokane apartment complex has demanded that a tenant remove his Biden-Harris sign from his apartment window. She continues, I am also a tenant at this apartment complex and would like to display a sign too, but am hesitant about creating a legal battle unless absolutely necessary to protect my freedom of speech. To verify whether a landlord can make you take down a political sign from your window, I reached out to the managing attorney of the King County Bar Association's Housing Justice Project, Edmund Witter, and Spokane City Council President and Attorney Brianne Beggs. To be clear, we are examining this issue as it pertains to tenants in the state of Washington. Idaho may have different laws. If you're renting an apartment or a house, what are your rights as a tenant when it comes to displaying a political sign, let's say, in your window?
Yeah, so the answer depends on a couple things. One of the first things that it depends on is who your landlord is. Is your landlord the government, or is it not the government? It's just like a private landlord.
Witter says if your landlord is the government, for example, if you live in federally subsidized housing, then you have some First Amendment constitutional rights to display your political sign. However, if your apartment or home is privately owned, Witter says the issue becomes more complicated.
It's definitely a free speech issue, without a doubt. The problem is that the First Amendment applies to government, not to private landlords or private entities. So I think that's really the big difference there.
He says check your lease agreement. If your lease includes a restriction on putting up political signs or anything else in your windows, it will likely be enforceable. However,
well, I mean, absent something in the lease, you probably have a right to do it.
What do you think about that issue?
Yeah, so I'm a strong believer that people should be able to express their political views in their homes from their windows.
City Council President Brianne Beggs agrees that if your landlord's the government, the law is clear, you can display your political sign. When it comes to privately owned entities, Beggs believes previous rulings in Washington support renters' rights to display a sign, although he admits the answer isn't as clear.
I would say there's a great argument under Washington law that you can, but any time that you're trying to vindicate the rights under the Constitution, there's some risk that there could be some blowback and even some price that you might pay. So you should always consult your own lawyer.
So we can verify that if your landlord is the government, you can display your political sign in your window. If your landlord is a private entity, check your lease agreement for specific language.
All right, very good to know. Thanks, Mark. And now let's turn to Tom Sherry. We're expecting some warm, very sunny weather. Still warm tomorrow, right? But then things start to change.
Yeah, mid-70s expected tomorrow. Beautiful fall weather. Feels more like September than October, right? Early September. 80 degrees right now. Just incredibly warm. You see the winds are calm here in the Spokane area. When we talk about the satellite and radar picture, you don't see any real cloud cover. You got a few clouds rolling up through the Blue Mountains in northeastern Washington. But my gosh, we'll look for clear skies here. Beautiful half moon visible tonight with overnight lows dropping down to about 50 degrees. 75 the expected high tomorrow. And if you want flannel shirt weather, you know, and get out there and a little bit of rain, that's on the way by the weekend. It'll be blustery, windy, and 63 on Saturday with rain at times. 58 on Sunday. We're tracking temperatures in the upper 50s and lower 60s next week. I'll show you more details on that with a look at your 7-day forecast in a few minutes.